Well, hello folks, I'm L.A. Little, and this is your daily NeoTA wrap, where we take a look at these markets, and we do it from a neoclassical perspective each time, asking ourselves what happened today and what does it tell us about the coming ones. I do a show 4 times a week, every Monday through Thursday, broadcast at or before 10 o'clock Eastern Time, archived on YouTube under the channel L.A. Little. As far as what these markets are doing, it's going up, folks. They just keep rolling higher and higher. And it's really the tech stocks that are moving it. It's the big cap tech. And tonight we got a re-emphasis of that with Google. As Google blows away their numbers, blows away price points, they were already up significant price into the earnings, and they jumped another 15% on the earnings, or about actually 15% on the day, about 11% on the earnings. Big up move. Google, of course, second, third highest weighted in the NDX. That's pushing the NDX up higher after hours. We're up another, let's see here, the close was 45 on the futures, was about 45.83. Right now they're trading at 46.13. So what is that, 30 points? So another 30 points tonight on the NDX futures. As far as the rest of the market, not nearly as big a move. Dow is up 0.4, S&P up 0.8, Russell 0.66. Elsewhere, not much happening, pretty flat, except for gas, natural gas, and oil, down about 1% there. Gold and silver couldn't do anything either. They were down third, fifth, 0.5%. And the dollar up one more time, and the dollar's been up quite a bit lately. Let's take a look at the indexes, and matter of fact, let's just start with the FXE. The FXE gets under the swing point low, doesn't have the volume, but it's starting to expand back down towards the bottom of that range. If we bring over the weekly chart, you can see it's starting to get into this big bar here with the volume. Top of that bar is 107.03. Trades tonight at 106.80. So if you stay in that bar for another bar, and this is the weekly now, so in other words this week and next, then you're going to try to get to the bottom of it. So in other words, you're going to come all the way back down to test those lows. That's the euro. Now of course that's going to press the dollar higher. So if we look at the dollar, it's the opposite case, right, where this thing is going up to test the highs, and then if you bring it on the weekly, it's going to try to get into the big bar on the way down, the breakdown bar. 25.69 is the low. You're at 25.56, so the dollar is getting ready to go into that bar. If it waits one more bar before it tests here, you'll have a swing point high to break, and then you'll have 3 of them lined up to go after. That's on the weekly. If we look at the bonds held today, held price, started to push up. So the bonds are still holding that lower level, but they are holding, which is good news for them. Let's go to, quickly, let's go back to the general markets now. So we got the dollar pressing higher, which should be a bad thing for stocks on the next set of earnings. But this set of earnings, you know, the expectation is they wouldn't be as good, but as I told members probably 2-3 weeks ago, I expected these earnings to actually come in a little bit better than people expect, because the dollar hasn't been the headwind that it has been recently. So if you look at the S&Ps now have traversed all the way up. I mean, I've seen a lot of V-shaped reversals in my time, but I can only tell you I haven't seen this many one after another, time after time, which is what we keep seeing. Into the thick of the resistance. This is it, folks. If you're short on this market, this thing has to turn now, or you're going to have to close them, because you've come all the way up. You're all the way up into what is the tough bars. That's these 2 bars. And if you can't turn it back now, it's going after the highs again. So S&P up at the top of the range, trying to make it back up and over, which it hasn't done in what is it, almost 7 weeks now. NASDAQ sitting at the top of the range. If you go to the top of the range, it's here. Top there is 516,436. You close at 516,318, so you're a buck under it. NDX up 30 points. Well, guess what? This is going over the top tomorrow. speaking of the NDX, here it is over the top. If you pull it back, look at it on a weekly, you're busting out of the top. That's that high volume top that we've had trouble with. You're getting over it. You're not going to have the volume, but you're going to get over it nevertheless, unless you have a major melt tomorrow, which seems pretty unlikely with the NDX up 30 already. So all of those very positive. The one that's negative is the Russell. The Russell comes up, pushes up to that breakdown bar and cannot get over it, sitting right at it. So the Russell is now all of a sudden the laggard, right? Stuck on this bar. If it gets over it, yeah, all there is the top. There's nothing else. Well, you kind of have this bar too, right? So these are kind of grouped together. But that's what's keeping it here. If it gets over it, I would think you're going to get a decent push. That's probably going to be a good buy if in fact it happens. Just extension, right? A little consolidation, then an extension higher. So that's the Russell. But right now, the Russell is the one giving us a tell that we're going to try to go the other way. And so we've got the NDX up big, wanting to go larger. We've got the Russell on the other side now saying no. And you know, for a long time, the Russell has been the best indicator for whatever reason. And so I wouldn't totally dismiss it. The other piece of that is this market has moved a lot in a very short period of time. And so even if the market wants to go higher, you have to expect at some point here it's going to take a little bit of a break. And that's you know, that's basically the bottom line. If we go over to Europe now, in Europe we've gotten over the swing point highs too. So I didn't think they would make it, but by goodness they did, right? They're over it. 50.95, you close over it. So if we pull this back, put it on a weekly, you're coming into the lows, the highs low, right? So that top, well, it's not quite the high. It was the spike high from April 13th. The low on that is 51.32. You get to 51.21. Probably gonna try to spike into it tomorrow. And I think all the news on Greece is already in this market at this point. And so I wouldn't be surprised at all to see this thing finally take a break and come back. The German DAX, same thing. Over here, let's put it on a weekly. Over here, you're coming into, they're not the big bars, but the breakdown bar was here. It's already into it, going after the swing point high. The number on that was 11,920. And this one closes tonight at 11.7. So another 150 or so. So when I look at those guys, you know, they've done great, and they've you know, we've talked about this being a range trade for so long. It shouldn't surprise us that the range plays both sides, right? You expect ranges to trade up and down inside the range, build out the ranges, and potentially test those ranges until eventually you get some sort of a breakout. That's the way it's supposed to play out. And so right now, the fact that it's coming back up just reaffirms that in fact that was a range. The call was right? When we started calling this 4 months ago that we probably had a range trade, you know, the ideal was correct. It's just that now we're seeing that range play out, and you know, it's hard if you're in this downtrend. It's hard to believe it's going to pop back the other way, but you know, as I've said before, strong trends, QE, it's very hard to believe this thing's going to break down and come all the way back, right, and go into some sort of a tailspin. Just probably is not going to happen, and that isn't what is happening. If we go to China, now China, people were talking about it's rolling over, it's going to fall back down. You know, it came into this bar. This was the bar off the bottom. Top of that was 37.48. Got to about 36.91, flips around, closes over it, has less volume on the test. Also was testing these lows. You know, this looks like a clean reversal to me, and having been a clean reversal, right, you can expect this to try to do an ABCD up now. So, you know, at this point, at least after tonight, this looks like it's going to try to do an ABCD structure to the upside. And remember, the test is up here. It's on this swing point low. And so that will be the test as it comes up. Right in there probably is where you're going to see it try to get to. And that looks pretty positive. Doesn't look negative at all. And finally, looking at Hong Kong. Hong Kong kind of the same way. Not much of a roll. Hangs. Probably going to try to head higher. So I expect those range build outs in Asia to start taking place, and they're going to be large ranges there, so expect large moves up and down. We're going to see Europe probably stay in the range, and if that's true in both cases, then I don't suspect this range in the US is going to break all that far. In other words, we're going to get up to the highs, maybe make new highs like we're doing on the NDX, and then we're going to come back down into the range just like we've done many times before. I suspect that's probably what we're going to see happen here. Was it stronger than expected? Yes, indeed. Could it not be forecast? No, I mean we knew it would come up to the top of the range again at some point. You had the breakdowns down here, couldn't extend it down, and when that happened, right, it comes back the other way. So if I'm looking here at the S&P key numbers, those numbers, which is where we are right now, and even after hours, S&Ps are flat, even though we've got the NDX up 30 plus points. So you can see that resistance starting to play a factor in this index as well. I got 3 stocks folks want to look at, so let me quickly go to those and see what we got there. And so the first one is Citigroup. It wants to know on the intermediate term time frame what we think. Well, you just broke 2 swing point highs. This was on earnings today. Volume expands, and you break it here on the weekly. You already broke it actually on the weekly, so you really just have a break on the daily. Well, the other piece of this, of course, is the XLF. XLF broke out to all-time highs, not all-time highs, take that back, broke out to new highs on the year. This doesn't look bad. I mean, I'm looking at it on the weekly here, and what I'm looking at is this. You kind of got an ABCD structure, right, that's here. That one never quite finished, so it looks like it's going to try to finish it off. It never quite got there. Let's do the numbers real quick. So this is 1, 2, yeah, so that's the low, 46.83. The top was 54, so it's about $8. $8 on the disc gets you to about 59, and yeah, it's about right where I put it. So it's got a little bit farther to go, and so even though you have now a nested structure inside this, and actually you don't. You actually have this one that already completed, right? And then you've got another little one inside of it. That one is about to complete. So really, this doesn't look like a chase on the weekly. It actually looks like it's just about extended to where it wanted to go. Actually, let me take that. No, that's true. That's true. That's correct, because this one's actually a lower low here. So you would actually start the next count from here. So yeah, this looks like it's about done on the weekly. Let me go back and pull up the daily right quick, since I popped straight to the weekly. And let me get the daily again, just a second. And so the daily, you got its 2 swing point highs, you break over. Yeah, I don't know, man. I don't think this is the best one in the group. I mean, if I were going for a financial in the group, I'd probably look at one of the other ones. And I'm just going to pull up one that's a favorite of mine, which is Wells Fargo. Let me see what that one looks like. Wells Fargo had earnings earlier this week, and they're up there testing the tops. And they're testing with about the same amount of volume, 58.26. I think you're going to see pullbacks in all of these. You can buy the pullbacks. I don't know that I'd try to. I certainly wouldn't try to chase this breakout. There's too much that still is on the table here. I just mentioned overseas index is not probably going to break out, but even if you look inside the U.S. markets, you've got a lot of sectors that are still struggling, right? Even though the indexes are up at highs. So that's where that one is. Let's look at another one. Jarden, which is they make all sorts of kitchenware and stuff like that. They've got a nice big pop-up. So the question here is tempting buy on the daily earnings on 720. Tempting buy the daily earnings on 729. Can I hold here above the swing point highs on the daily? Yeah, I think it probably can. Yeah, and the reason for that is you've kind of got this high. That was the break. Well, actually, that's less volume, so that's why you're getting the test. So you're getting the retest regen. Now, the test comes in on lower volume here, right? You can test as low as this and still be a valid, a valid signal to the upside. So it may test even lower, especially with earnings still out there. It may test lower if the market starts to pull back. But I suspect you got to buy in this area if you wanted to play it into earnings. Now, I typically don't like to play into earnings, and I'm looking over here on the weekly. I'd like to see it hold this weekly breakout actually this week. If it did that, that would be a really good sign, and yeah, it would look like a buy. So I'd give it until tomorrow and see what it looks like. Lastly, let's look at IBB. The IBB question here is, can you analyze the IBB from the perspective of it shooting higher, maybe to about 402, and then selling the IBB short using the March and June as an example? Okay, so let's follow this. So what do we have here first on the daily? You had a range trade that was about this wide, right? So you could expect a range trade potentially to take you that high. That's even higher than 402. If you do the width of this, this looks like about, let's get a number down here. So let's just take this low, it's 357, take that high, 385. So that's about almost 30, 28 really, and then tack that onto here. 30 would be 15, so that's about 413. So you're talking 402. It looks like it maybe could do 413. Let's look at it on the weekly. And so when you were saying short it, of course, you were talking about these kind of fast pullbacks that took place. I've seen multiples of these take place before, and so I think that's what you're talking about. In other words, they run it up really high, and then of course everybody jumps ship when it starts to turn, right? It's momentum stuff. And I think that's very true, and I think it's very playable, but your timing, of course, has to be really good, because if in fact this does just keep going, right, you're on the bad side of a trade. It can turn really bad and really ugly fairly quickly. So you're gonna have, if you're gonna trade it that way, you're gonna have to manage that trade pretty tight. So you broke out over a swing point high here, you retested, now you're regenerating. And if I look at this, right, on an ABCD structure, here you have, looks like to there, down, and then up. And that probably takes you to about that 405 number you were talking about, 402. So somewhere between about 402 or whatever this ABCD is, we can get the numbers real quick. So the low is 330, the top was here, which was 367, so that's 37 onto that. That's 94, you're already there. So this one's already completed. So the weekly's already done. You just have the daily to contend with. So I think anywhere from about that 402 to about 13, somewhere up in there is the area. And yeah, you could play it that way. You just look for a reversal, right? If you're going to trade something like that, you need a reversal. You need something like here, you got a doji, then you start down, right? You need some sort of reversal. For example, you go over this back under lower volume tomorrow. That would give you the sort of reversal I'm talking about, and you could trade it that way. Okay? Well, that's it for tonight, folks. As far as tomorrow, it looks to me like we're certainly going to have divergence. We had it today. It looks like we're going to have it tomorrow. And then the question is going to be is how much farther can they extend this thing? And even when they do pull it back, how do they pull it back? Now that you've got the breakout on the NDX, for example, and you're probably going to have it on the NASDAQ itself tomorrow, unless we have a pretty big reversal. And let me pull up that chart. What you have to look at on the retrace now, you've got a strong move. This is a break on multiple swing points. I don't remember if I said that or not, but you've got multiple swing points here that just broke. Any move higher, which is going to come tomorrow, you want to see that retrace hold on that first retest regen, right? This has to hold. If it does, right, then you've got your ABCD structure back into here wherever it stops, and a big move back up if in fact it regenerates higher. So you want to see this hold, then you want to see the laggard actually do something, and in this case the Russell, and then that would give you a pretty good indication that you may actually have a range break and that this market's finally ready to take off again. Until we see that, though, we don't know. And so what we do is we monitor that pullback. But what we do know tonight here's another index like we've seen 3 or 4 times now since about February, March. Another index that is breaking out. Probably it's probably going to get pulled back in, and then it's going to be okay. Does it just keep coming down, right, like we've seen before, or does it actually hold? Because just like it was, I remember doing a show once before where I said the way this is going to work is you're not going to get a pullback. I mean, think about it. You go all the way to the top without a stop. You're out of juice by the time you get there. You can't just keep going forever. You're going to get a retrace. If that retrace doesn't come too deep and then you get the move back up, that's the one that can break everything out. And that's what's going to break out of this range when it's finally done. Have a great one, folks. Take care. I'll see you Sunday. Good night.